Everybody, welcome to the school committee meeting. It is Friday, November 15. David, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Conant. I'm going to review for a minute the whole superintendent search process. Today's the culminating event of many months of work, and I really want to thank, first of all, Dr. Albert Argenziano. He was brought on board in April of this year for two purposes. First, to serve as our interim superintendent starting in July 1st, and second, to spearhead the superintendent search process. He is an accomplished and well-respected leader in the education field with decades of experience as both a superintendent and a superintendent search consultant, and he presented us with an array of very highly qualified candidates. The superintendent search process began in the late spring with the advertising of the position. We gained community input on the qualities desired. There were several different focus sessions held throughout the city over a 3-day period, actually about 30 different sessions. And 300 individuals attended those. There was an online survey. The results were compiled by Endicott College, and there was direct communication by a lot of those in the public to school committee members. I really want to thank all the members of the public for participating in this process. I also would like to thank members of the selection committee for their time and dedication to task. There were 45 different individuals who inquired about the position. 32 submitted completed applications by the deadline, and Dr. Argenziano conducted initial interviews of 16 of those people. The selection committee, which was comprised of parents, teachers, administrators, members of the general public, and some school committee members, interviewed 9 semifinalists and sent to us 4 individuals that we interviewed this past week as our finalists: Sean Gallagher, Chris Malone, Dr. Andrew Keogh, and Dr. Stephen Hershey. Lastly, I want to thank BevCam for televising all of these. I know that most of them are up at least on their website, and the rest of them will be available this weekend on regular TV. Today we're going to discuss the candidates and decide our top choices. Site visits will be conducted early next week to validate our choice. Dr. Argenziano has conducted full background checks of the 4 finalists, and next Thursday we will meet to confirm our selection, although a vote will be taking place today. I want to remind everybody this is a public meeting. It is not a public forum. There will not be any audience participation. And I'd like to remind the school committee that to please wait to be recognized before you speak. So I will open it up to discussion on the 4 candidates.
Does anyone have a way in which they'd like to proceed?
Yeah, I think I'd like to take each candidate in the order of interviews and just kind of give everybody a minute or two to state their thoughts on a particular candidate, not necessarily to vote or advocate initially, but just to express their thoughts. And but I'm open to other ideas if that's preferable.
Okay, Matt, so our first candidate was Sean Gallagher, if you'd like to.
Sure. You know, I think we all know Sean very well. I think the benefit with Sean is he's a known quantity. We know that he's he's been tremendously successful here at BHS. He's, I see him as a true leader of children and certainly staff and teachers. He's dedicated and passionate. He showed his competency in the NEAS project, the SLC grant, the Freshman Academy. He's done a lot of good things, and I think he's got very good communication skills. And he's dedicated and passionate. I think when we look at the list of things that we were looking for and as a school committee and the public was looking for, I think where Sean doesn't have some of the experience as a superintendent, that he puts him at a disadvantage with other candidates. And I think that he's not yet licensed as a doctor, but I think he's certainly going down that road. So I think very highly of Sean. In fact, my daughter said to me when I picked her up at the Y the other day, she had asked what I was doing. I said we were interviewing superintendents and we had just finished interviewing Sean. And she said, well, I really like him as my principal. I'd like him to stay at High School. So I said, maybe I can help you with that. I did. But Sean, I think, has got a tremendous, tremendous future. But he's up against some very difficult competition.
David?
I'd just like to say, I don't think anyone would bring more to the community than Sean himself. I think of all the candidates in regards to presence in the community and being a cheerleader for the people that make up the educational system in Beverly and the students, and I guess everything that comprises Beverly Public Schools. But as Sean has stated, during his career, there's always been things that have stood in his way of taking that next step in his pursuit of a doctorate. My concern would be that this would just be another one of those situations where Sean would put in 1,000% into the job and be so dedicated that he would have a hard time, I think, getting to that next level of education, and that's what concerns me. He's done so much contributing to the building and the completion of this project here at the high school. Now is his time, really, he could somewhat take a breath of air and continue to pursue his doctorate, and I think that would work to his advantage. I hope to see him in this district for his entire career. And the last thing I'd like to do is shoo him away. But, as I said, that's where I see it would be a disadvantage to him if, in fact, we were to move in that direction with Sean.
I just want to echo some of the things that Matt said. I also have a student here at the high school, and I'm very happy to have Sean as his principal. I think one of the hallmarks of Beverly Public Schools is we have excellent administrators, excellent building principals from elementary through high school, and so I think Sean's done a great job. And I was reviewing my notes earlier today, and I was always going back to, there was a time not too long ago when I thought Sean was the vision for this district. That it seems like whatever innovation came out of the Beverly Public Schools, whether it was the SLC grant or the state program or all these other programs that are visionary, were coming from Sean. I'm not so concerned about the lack of a PhD. I actually have one, and I work with people who are doctorates, and so I know that many times experience matters as much as the letters behind your name. And so that isn't a limitation for me, although the focus groups seem to put that as a priority. And so, of course, we have to recognize that. And again, some of the things that Matt has already said about being a cheerleader for the community, being a voice in the community, being integrated, Sean's already done that. And so there's no question. The question we have with some of these other candidates are not there with Sean, because he's at the football games and he's at every concert and show, and he is by and large the cheerleader for Beverly Public Schools right now. That being said, I think we need to look at a much broader picture of the experience and leadership qualities that we want to have on our next superintendent. And I don't quite see him there yet. I think it'd be great if he actually got some district-wide experience, hopefully here, so that someday we could sit at this table again and have that conversation, and Sean would be at the top of the list. But I don't think that's today for me.
Anybody else?
Well,
Chris?
I guess I've been looking at it a little bit differently. Rather than kind of talking about each candidate separately, I've been reviewing my notes and thinking about what we wanted as a school committee, what the community wanted through the focus groups, and I think what we have before us is a wide range of, skills and abilities, and a wide range of personalities. And I think in my opinion, it would be helpful, or it's been helpful for me to think about, do we want somebody with a ton of supervisory experience that can just come right in, or do we want somebody who would be fresh and brand new at this, who
may require some mentoring and some work to get up to speed with some things. I also, I used my gut as a bit of a gauge around vision and about, meeting that long list of criteria from the community, and the list that I had put together was not even everything, it was just most everything. And I think Al said this to us when we sat with him a couple weeks ago. He said, we're probably not going to find Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and Albert Einstein all rolled into one. So that being said, I think, it's a big decision, and I know who's top in my brain, and I also, just as far as Sean goes, I also have a high schooler who said that he thinks that Sean should be the superintendent because he loves him so much and would love to share him with everybody in the city. So I thought that was a nice sentiment. And I appreciate Sean. I think he does a lot of great work for the kids in the city. But he's up against some people with more experience, and that's coming into consideration for me. So.
Emery?
Yeah, you can't not love Sean Gallagher. I mean, you would have to be living under a rock to not know who he is and what he's brought to the high school. But I just think he's just not quite ready, and I would love to see him move forward, whether it be his doctorate, it doesn't necessarily have to be that, like Paul said, or just some district-wide experience. And I think with the new superintendent coming, there should be plenty of opportunities for that, because whoever we hire, they're going to be new to the job as being Beverly superintendent. So everybody's going to need some sort of mentoring. And, hopefully the district pulls together for that to happen.
Actually, can I just respond to a point that Chris raised? I think this group of 4 that we have in front of us, I think we can very easily separate them into these 2 and those 2. And the way I do that is that you have some very seasoned, experienced district-wide administrators, and then you have 2 less experienced, but lots of energy. I hate to use the terms young and old, because that's not how it breaks down. It's experience versus localized experience. So high school experience, localized versus district-wide. And so I think the candidates break down into those 2 groups fairly easily. And so part of the question we need to be asking ourselves: do we want that experienced hand, a person who's proven that they can do the job, they have done the job, or are we looking for that person that are, for lack of a better phrase, is on its way up and maybe has the vision and the energy to really grow into the job and bring the district with them. So I think that's really 2 different people we could be looking at.
I'll just say that I'm a big fan of Sean's and have been for years. And I think a lot of what's been said is very true. But it would be a totally new experience for him, and I think we have to think about that.
Okay. Our second candidate was Chris Malone. Does anybody want to share their thoughts on Chris?
I think Chris would be a detailed guy, great taskmaster. He's very local. He lives in Danvers, but not very far from us here. I think he'd be very visible. I think that he'd be a good director of people. I guess that's all I'd like to say at this point.
Okay. Anyone else? Paul?
I like Chris a lot. I think he's a very capable candidate. One of the things that impressed me, and probably you as well, is the amount of effort, amount of homework he did on our district, and the fact that he came in with an entry plan. He came in with, this is what technology is going to look like. This is what's going to happen the first year or so of my administration. He clearly did his homework, and he has a lot of energy and a lot of drive. And that's something that I would love to see in whoever we decide to bring on as a superintendent. One of the things that he said that I liked was that one of the jobs of the superintendent is to find a way to say yes. And so when a teacher and an administrator comes to them with not just the problem, but with the solution to the problem, the superintendent's job is to find a way to say yes and make it happen. And so I like that kind of spirit in him, that he was someone who struck me as willing to work with people, to build consensus, and then take action to make the plan go ahead, make the plan successful. And so I actually liked him quite a bit.
Anyone else? Matt?
Yeah, I think, Chris, he certainly was well prepared, and I should step back and say all 4 of these individuals I think are going to become superintendents, and all I think are going to be very good superintendents. And Chris did come with a lot of homework done, certainly demonstrated that. He doesn't have as much experience as the other applicants we have to draw from. I have to say I thought that his self-described leadership style and his comments about public education were less compelling than other candidates, but there's no doubt in my mind that he will be a successful superintendent at some point.
I mean, one of the things I liked about him is that he had broad experience. He worked both in an elementary environment, high school environment, district-wide. He was he is the assistant superintendent of schools in Revere, as well as a principal in Revere. So he had that district-wide and vertical experience that would be important in this job. That was one of the things I liked about him.
Anne-Marie?
He also did have a lot of technology experience, which I thought was certainly in one of the directions that we're moving, and we're trying to. And so I like that about him. He said he believed in hands-on leadership style, and that's something that you just sort of have to trust that that's what it is. That because everybody's there are buzzwords everybody's saying, everybody's going to say I'm collaborative, I'm this, I'm that, and so that's something you have to go with a level of trust. I think his the letters of recommendation certainly went to that.
Anyone? Chris?
Well, at some point, I'd like to hear your thoughts, Mrs. Decker, as well, so to be part of the conversation. There were some things that Mr. Malone talked about that really grabbed me, like his connection to the state level and advocacy from that point of view. But I have to say, and he was extremely well prepared. I mean, he brought us handouts and so forth, and some of it was different ways of looking at our district, which I appreciated. And sometimes when we do these things, we get good ideas from people too, so that was helpful. But I have to say, he wasn't my top choice.
It's funny, you mentioned the public advocacy at the state level. For me, that was sort of the opposite feeling. I expect advocacy to be at your local community level first, and to jump to the state level, that was a turnoff. So.
I have to say, I thought, I could have been wrong, but I thought what the question was asking was designed to get an answer about what you would do locally. But it's fair enough that he told us what he would do. He was certainly honest about it, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, just one other thing. I like the fact that he, I guess, described himself as not being a micromanager. And I think that's a very important detail to look at in running a district for a superintendent, because that's where many superintendents can get lost in their areas of responsibility. So the fact that he described himself as a delegated. The other thing that I really liked about him was the fact that he described himself as someone that truly loved the job. He seemed to have a certain passion for what he did, and he did it for that reason and that reason alone. And the way that he described it to me was a little bit different than I heard from not all the candidates, but some of the candidates.
I didn't get to hear his whole presentation this time. I had heard it in the preliminaries. I think he's an impressive candidate, and I think he really gets well into the detail. And of course, he knows something about Beverly, having worked here for a couple of years, which I think is something of a plus.
I think he had, so one of the 2 questions I asked was on technology. I think he had probably one of the better answers to my question, which was centered around how to bring families up to speed with the technology, because he talked a lot about this community school in Revere that was actually a resource for parents and provided after-hour support for parents and weekend workshops that were taught by other parents to novices on learning how to use the technology we're introducing to our students. And so that was one of the things I liked about him, was that he had one of my favorite answers to that question.
Anybody else? Okay, briefly then, our third candidate was Dr. Andrew Keogh. Emery?
Yeah, I liked him a lot. When I went in looking at him on paper, he didn't grab me as much, but when I met him, he really did grab me a lot. I think he was one of the 4 candidates who said the kids, the students, more. He said it probably like every third sentence he talked about the kids or the students, and that's what it really is about. And he just had a way about him that I felt that he was very good at explaining things. He talked, I liked his upfront answer about when Dave asked him about moving to Beverly. He said, no, I'm not going to move to Beverly, but I'll make sure that I get an apartment to live close enough. I just felt like he brought a lot to the table, and I wasn't sure that as a high school principal he would be able to do that. And it sounds like he has done district-wide stuff in his district. He does have a doctorate, and as I said, we don't see that as the be-all and end-all. But I thought he was a strong candidate that felt like a good fit for Beverly to me.
Matt?
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. I thought very highly of Dr. Keogh. I thought he was thoughtful and articulate. He certainly seems to practice a collaborative approach. His recommendations were very detailed, well done, and outstanding. I'd say that of all of the recommendations I looked at, his were probably the best as far as is someone who the recommender was really predicting his success as a superintendent. He seems like he's on the cusp of getting there, and I think he will be hired as a superintendent sooner rather than later. I really liked his leadership style and how he described that. He did understand technology, and he's a principal of a school of 1,400 students, so he knows a little bit about budgeting and administrative work, and it certainly seemed like from his recommendations that he had a greater opportunity to work with the superintendent of the Wellesley schools than did perhaps other candidates, and Sean in particular. And that's sort of unfair in the sense that if a candidate isn't given that opportunity, they have no control over that, and I think he was given more opportunities than others. And particularly on the advocate for public education, his answer was it's a must to maintain a civil society, and that was sort of the approach that I was looking for. I think where I have reservations is just when you stack him up against the other candidate, and he doesn't have nearly the experience. And so when you look at Beverly as a school district, you have to say, okay, what's the best decision for us? We don't have a superintendent, don't have an assistant superintendent at the moment. We've got, fortunately, Val as our interim superintendent. And, which route do you want to go? Do you want to bring in someone who's got a lot of potential but is inexperienced, or someone who's, proven beyond a doubt in my mind that he's capable of doing the job? It's a tough call, because I think Andrew Keogh will be hired and he will be successful as a superintendent.
Chris, I'm sure the ceramics thing appealed to you.
Oh, he had me
I thought of you
play.
immediately when I heard that
Yeah,
comment.
yeah.
He actually said that in his initial interview with us, and you came to mind then.
So yeah, you're right. He had me at clay. And however, what I really appreciated what he said about that was why he does that. He explained to us that he does an after-school program with students, and he gets to dress down. He gets to be with the kids and learn about them, and they get to learn about him as a person versus the principal of their school. And he had a lot of examples throughout his interview that reminded me about that. His answer to, would you move to Beverly, that spoke to family value to me. It also spoke to family first, which I think a lot of people in our community, might agree with me on that. That's really important. He comes with a lot of experience. What impressed me most was when we were pouring through the paper. and his recommendations, and the story about coming into the Wellesley Public Schools and having to deal with 3 suicides and, of students, and how he handled all that. I just thought that was extremely impressive, how the writer wanted us to know about that. The other thing that he also has for experience is the experience of opening a new school, and I think that would help us a lot to have somebody who's done that 1 or 2 times. So it's no secret that he's my top choice.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, it was a secret to me before you said that.
oh, okay. Well,
Wait, what did you say, Maria? I'm sorry, I didn't hear
It
you.
was a secret to me before you said
Oh.
that. David?
I liked him. I liked him a lot. I believe that he's a collaborative leader, and that he brought out a point that you have to trust your leadership team, and he talked a lot about that. He talked about being a strong delegator, good decision maker, and I liked it when he said that he wasn't afraid to pull the trigger. So he's a decision maker, and our superintendent needs to be a decision maker. So I felt he was a very strong candidate. My concern with him is no different than some of the other candidates, or I guess Dr. Hershey, when we get to speak to him, but it's their lack of residency within the community. To me, that's a very important thing. So as we continue to talk about the candidates, I need to feel confident that a candidate that is so far outside the community is going to make the commitment to be a better part of the community. I know that we've had, since my time on the school committee, my 8th year on the school committee, our 2 superintendents have been outside the community. And I think that that's created some issues with some people. So in regards to their commitment to the community or the commitment to the district. But we'll have further discussion on this as we continue this afternoon.
Bill?
Very impressive candidate. Interesting that he answered all the questions and did it thoroughly, but took much less time than anyone else. Very impressive guy, no question.
Emery?
Yeah, that was a good point. I meant to bring that up too, that he directly answered the questions. One he asked to be repeated, but for at least one of the candidates, we asked the question and it felt like he just kept going like this and never really answered it. But in addition to talking about kids, I like the way he talked about teachers. And as a teacher, he said, teachers always need more time. And I like that. And he said, relieving teachers from duties, putting support staff in the cafeteria. And I've always said, I don't know why we have teachers out in the audience. I don't understand why we have teachers that are getting paid whatever an hour doing lunch duty. And I'm sure there's some social reasons why that's good. But on the whole, I would rather have my teacher prepping or something else than having other people who can be supportive of students, but doing some of those jobs. I think our teachers, we are asking so much more of our teachers now than we did 5 years ago. We all know. And basically, he understands that because I think he was a teacher. He's moved up the ranks. I don't know. I'm going to go with Chris. He's my top choice.
So before I comment about Dr. Keogh, just to address Dave's concern, I've been sitting next to you for 8 years, and I understand exactly where you're coming from with the long-distance superintendents we've had. And so I see that as well. It may not be weighted as heavily on my decision-making process as other things, but I see it is important. The one thing I do know is that both Dr. Keogh and Dr. Hershey have been superintendents or have taken positions where they've rented and lived during the week in the community that they were working, and then basically went home to their families on the weekends. And so there's a middle ground that I think we can expect with either of these last 2 candidates, that they will certainly be, I hope that they will be a greater part of the community, but they're not going to be living in Beverly or right next door. And so I think that's one of those trade-offs that you have to kind of look at and say, well, is that good enough? Is that for that one thing that's influencing our decision, is that a good enough option that we can live with that? Because there are a lot of other things that we need to consider as well. Yeah.
Bill?
It was clear to me that Hershey said he'd have an apartment in the community, but it was not clear to me that Keough said that.
Keough
he
did
did.
not say that.
He didn't say
No.
that?
Well, what he did
He
say.
said he would, sorry.
What he did say that he was.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor on that. I did not hear that. I heard that from Dr. Hershey. Dr. Keough, I never heard that come out of his lips, so.
I thought I did.
Yeah, he did say that he would probably.
Consider. He
yeah,
said he would
get-
consider.
What was it he said?
He said he would consider getting an
Yeah.
apartment. He would stay put where they are. He would consider getting a place in Beverly, whereas Hershey said he would get a place in Beverly. He's done it in the past, and
Right.
so it shows that he certainly would do it again.
The other thing he said about being visible in the community was, that he used the term ghost. He would not be a ghost presence when he, came to things. He would, take time and take great effort, in fact, to speak to people and get to know them and have people see him in his family role as well, so.
Right.
Yeah.
He's the one who mentioned that he wouldn't be showing up simply to check that box that said, I'm here. He would actually engage with the community.
Yeah.
David?
Yeah, and I think that came out when he talked about, doing the ceramics thing, in
He's probably a
school
fabulous
visiting.
principal. You keep talking about his reference to kids and how he engages with them in the ceramics and the fly fishing and those examples. I don't know how that would translate to being a superintendent.
And, I do agree with Anne Marie, the statement that he made about, I guess, his dealing with the teachers, giving them more free time.
Yeah. Well, you know that. You were an administrator.
Exactly. But I also see the other side of it. The other side of the coin is that if a teacher is just seeing students from the classroom and maybe a few glimpses out in the corridor, they miss a lot when they don't see how the kids interact socially in the cafeteria. And that gives them a tremendous opportunity not to just see teachers that they're teaching, but to see the general school population,
That's a good point.
which is very
Bill?
important.
I'd like to just agree with that point because I can remember, this is a little bit to the side, but I was responsible for a company in Brazil at one time. And they had people who did shopping for these people because their time was so valuable. And these people spent a whole lot of time thinking up things for people to go and shop for them. So and if I go way back to when I went to school, we never saw the teachers in the cafeteria. We never saw them in a get-to-know-me setting. And so frankly, I think there's a lot more social value in that than most people might think.
Anybody else? Paul?
Well, actually, let me just say a few words about Dr. Keough itself. I was very impressed with his qualifications. I think he's a highly qualified administrator, and like Matt, I agree he's going to be a very good superintendent someday, whether it's in Beverly or elsewhere. I think that's without question where he's going to be. Some of the questions he answered, I thought he did a great job on. The question that Chris asked about the different students. Can you tell us about how you would address different needs for different students? The high achievers, the ones in the middle that need that push up, and then the ones that need more support than others. I thought he had a great answer to that question. I was very impressed with that. The thing that impressed me most about him, or one of the things that impressed me most about him, was that he was a great listener. He was very calm, good energy, a good listener, and you could tell that the wheels were turning inside of his head when you were asking him a question. Very thoughtful, considerate, deep thinker, and so there's a very, I think that's a skill, that's an attitude that I think would benefit him as a superintendent, because you have to take some time to consider the bigger picture, and I see that he can do that, and so I see him as a highly qualified candidate for this position.
Okay, and our last candidate was Dr. Stephen Hershey. Matt, you want to start?
Sure. I probably from my comments you can tell that he's not necessarily my personal choice. I think he's the best choice for the district, and I'll tell you why. When you look through all of the qualifications that we as a school committee have asked for, the focus groups. Chris, by the way, was very kind to put together a list of of things that we as a school committee and also focus groups and teachers, administrators put together, what they were looking for. And as I looked through this, I think I could check almost every box for Dr. Hershey. And that's not to say that the other candidates aren't very good, because I think all of them are very good. I just think that he's better than anyone else that we've got in front of us. And I was impressed by a few things. I was impressed by his, communication skills. I think all of his answers, I think he answered the questions more fully and better than any other candidate. And I think that was just a result of his experience. He's done it, he's been a leader, he's been a principal, he's been a teacher. I really liked how he talked about how he would hold his meetings, and very focused on what he would do. He had meet with his leadership team on a regular basis, principals, teachers, group dynamics. He never once mentioned school committee, which I didn't see as a bad thing. I think he put his priorities in order in the way they should be, which is with the people that he's working with. The fact that he's been a superintendent in Watertown, Framingham, that he's, worked at a collaborative, I just think that you just can't ignore the wealth of experience that he brings to the table. And for us as a school district, without a superintendent, without an assistant superintendent, I think that we need someone, or I should say the school district needs someone who can walk in the door with the varied experience that he has and make things happen immediately.
Dave?
I agree with everything Matt just said. I believe he's the strongest of the four candidates in just about all the areas. The community thing, obviously, I've already stated that's an issue with me to a degree, but he is definitely, I believe, can hit the ground running immediately. I think he's a collaborative leader, and as a matter of fact, he saw the downside of that, and he talked about how, people coming into his office on a regular basis, he was going to solve all the problems of the world, bring everyone into the conversation, and then he realized that, you also can be paralyzed by doing that. All right, so I think that. He has a strong side in that area, but also realizes it can be a weakness. In him being aware that he's better able to manage his time and become a better manager of the district. So I believe that he is the strongest candidate.
I think it interesting, Emery, because you mentioned how Dr. Keogh was quick in his answers, and I think part of the reason Dr. Hershey was a little bit more lengthy is that he has so much experience, and he had stories and specific examples to share about each and every one of those. But I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
Well, first, about the superintendent living here, Dave, before you were on school committee, Bill Lupini, who lives in Beverly, was superintendent, and when he left, he said he would never be superintendent in the town that he lived anymore because he found it, there was politics in it, and I think we've been lucky that we haven't had politics in it, but maybe that's because our superintendents haven't lived exactly here. Now, I agree that they were far away, but that's just another way to look at it.
Well, I agree. I agree with that point. I could see where there could be problems, but we also have a history. We've had a lot of superintendents that have lived in the city of Beverly, going back to Armand Fortunato and former superintendent Ayers, and you can just go back 50 years and look at the number of superintendents that actually lived in the city of Beverly. My concern is that they don't not live in the city, but I mean they're 2 hours away.
No. I don't. I think a commute from Bourne would be difficult for sure. I think he does. He does have a lot to offer. He certainly has done the job before. He spent time as a special ed teacher, which I really liked. He's created programs. He talked about, morale being good, and you have to make sure that if your staff isn't happy, we know that is really important. My red flags were the fact that he's, job after job after job after job. It doesn't feel like he stayed anywhere for significantly a long time, like 1 year, 2 years, that he was an interim in Hopkinton, and he applied to be the regular superintendent, and they didn't choose him, and so he would have been a known quantity to them. He was offered the job in Mashpee on one day, and then the next day they rescinded it, and
Yeah, that was, from what I read, that sounded more of a negotiation issue. There's a lot of infighting between that particular school committee, and I wouldn't read too much into that.
I don't know.
Well, I guess if you go back, though, he was superintendent in Plymouth for 5 years, for Watertown for 5 years, for Framingham for 3 years, during a really horrible time. And I don't put much stock in the Hopkinton thing, because
Okay,
I think they're really picky.
Okay, but it just stating what I, what.
He promised us 5 years, though.
He
did
guaranteed
state
5
5
years.
years. I don't know that anyone else said that, but he did say he'd be here 5 years.
Okay, I missed that, but that's good to hear.
Do we know that information about any of the other candidates?
Maybe it was asked in our,
Possibly, but I
Selection
mean, at
committee.
least that
I don't think it was
the
asked,
question
it was
I think
just
you're
offered.
working
it was
towards.
offered then.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
That
Glenn.
doesn't mean we're offering a 5-year contract. though, right?
No, but I think that answers the concern that you're expressing, is that we wouldn't have him for, more than a year or two.
I just don't want to do this again in 2 years.
When I agree with you, I mean, I think it's a very valid point. I'm not looking to approve a superintendent that's going to be here for 3 years even. And that's one reason why I would be in favor, and we're not here to talk about contracts, but
No, of course not.
but that would be why I would be in favor of a 5-year contract or someone coming in, and so we can kind of hold their feet to the fire. And
How about anything else on the candidate right now, though?
This particular candidate, I think everyone's pretty much said just about everything for the most
Well,
part.
when we get to a point that Matt made, he actually did mention the school committee. He wants to have a summer retreat with us.
Well, this is a different candidate we're talking about. Yeah, he did.
No, he did, and
Okay,
he did
yeah.
mention working with 9 different school committees when he was in
He'll
Vermont.
talk to us once during the summer, apparently, right?
No, not just talk to us. We're going to spend some quality time.
Yeah.
I think this candidate is clearly the most qualified of the 4 that we're considering tonight. I think he's done the job, not just done the job, but he's been a superintendent for, by my count, 17 years, and a principal for 9. And so he has demonstrated both practical classroom experience, building experience, and district-wide leadership. And so I think he is the most highly qualified person for this job. I particularly liked his answers to the subjects that I'm interested in. He had a great answer for the technology question. It's something that he has been interested in since he started teaching many years ago. And as both he and a number of the candidates identified, technology is one of the areas we need to work on going forward. I think he's the best candidate to push us in that direction. He also had a great response when it came to building budgets and setting priorities, and he talked a lot about the return on investment and cost benefit of different things you want to do. But he was also very realistic. And so whereas one candidate said the superintendent needs to find a way to say yes, I think he shares that view, but he also says, but sometimes you have to say no, and here's why. And so he also had my favorite answer to our very first question last night when we talked about the top 3 issues. And a lot of the candidates sort of ran out the same things. We're building a middle school, and so on, the technology. But when he talked about the future of global education, he talked about how do we take Beverly Public School students today and put them at a place in the future, and not too distant in the future, where they can compete globally on the world stage with students from all over the world. And I think that's the vision that we've been looking for. At least that's the vision I've been looking for my 8 years here. And I think in a very brief answer, he was able to sort of crystallize what I think we need to do in Beverly going forward. And so for that reason, he's what I believe is the strongest candidate for the position.
Bill?
I'd like to agree. I was terribly attracted to candidate 3, Mr. Keogh, but I don't think the next 5 years are going to be all rosy. This committee has had more problems than the world knows over the past 2 years, and I expect that the committee for the next 2 years is going to have some dysfunctional aspects. And I think this man will better handle those things than anyone else.
Well, I'm hoping, I'm a little more optimistic, though. But I think you're right. This can't, he's seen it all. He's dealt with $6 million cuts successfully. He's clearly in Watertown, he dealt with a divided town, never mind a divided school committee. He was able to make that work. His wealth of experiences, and I felt the same way. Dr. Keogh is a very compelling candidate, but when you compare the experience, I just don't think that he can match what Dr. Hershey brings.
Anybody else on any of the other candidates, David? No?
No, well, I agree on a lot of the strong points of Dr. Keogh. I think Dr. Hershey, can hit the ground running, and there's no two ways about it. But I also believe that, or I guess I'm a little cautious of maybe his style to a certain degree. I think that some people are going to love it, but I think there's going to be some people that might not like it.
That's true for all of us, though.
Well, absolutely, there's no doubt about that, but I just believe that with Dr. Hershey, it's going to surface a lot faster than with some of the other candidates.
I think he's not afraid to make unpopular decisions, if that's what you're saying. And he had to be creative with that budget, that huge budget deficit.
Yeah, and I believe he has pretty large personality. And sometimes that can be good, and sometimes that can be very bad. So, it can work in your favor and it can work against you at times. So I guess it depends on the issue at hand and how he handles himself. And I guess if in fact he's the candidate we select tonight, we'll find out soon enough.
Chris?
Yeah, my very first vote on the school committee as a brand new school committee member a few years back was this, right? Picking a new superintendent. And on my way to that vote, I was nearly ready to throw up because it was a big vote. And
You feel better tonight, I hope?
A whole lot better, yeah. But, it's a huge responsibility that we have here, and there's a lot of people, paying close attention to what we're going to come up with as a decision. So on my way here that day, I called a trusted colleague who has a lot more experience in this than I, and she said to me, "Chris, did you do your homework?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "What is your gut telling you?" And so I do have a gut feel about all four candidates, and I just wanted to share that because my gut isn't the only thing. I have my list. I have all these people I feel like are standing right behind me, hoping that we make the right decision. It's hard to know what the future brings for Beverly, but I do, just in comparison, I wanted to talk about the response to the last question from Dr. Hershey and from Dr. Keogh. Dr. Hershey talked about, global education and high-tech classrooms and teachers delivering courses in a blended environment, and that Beverly would be a great place to work. Some of those things I think we already have, or we're well on our way to. Dr. Keogh talked about a thriving system, a positive morale, supporting and encouraging new initiatives, which speaks to vision to me, where teachers feel valued, our facilities would be in good shape, our middle school would be functioning well, people would be content with that grade configuration, which is something I've been really thinking long and hard about is, where are we with that, and let's get to that conversation. And that people will be attracted to come and be in Beverly. And, I feel like our school system is what brings people to the community, and I feel like that's a big piece of it. So I just got this sense, my gut feel about Dr. Keogh was more visionary, it was more moving forward, it was more working collaboratively with the entire community around the middle school issue. I kind of got the feeling from Dr. Hershey that those things weren't as pressing to him. He just seemed a little bit, I don't really know the word, a little bit more removed from that than what I would have liked. So that's my thoughts.
I think that points to what Paul was saying about Dr. Hershey being a bigger perspective, a little more visionary, a global education type of a leader, as opposed to the small, localized viewpoints. So.
My favorite answer to that question was the very ambitious answer from Chris Malone. It says that in 5 years, we're going to be the flagship district of the North Shore. And I was fortunate enough to be on the screening committee, and a number of the candidates at that time said, went even beyond that and said that we would be one of the top 10 schools in Massachusetts. And I think those are both things to shoot for. No matter who's sitting here, and no matter who's taking on the role of superintendent, I think Beverly can get to both of those places. If we do our job, if the superintendent does their job, we know the teachers and administrators are on board with that plan as well. So I'm actually very optimistic about moving forward. Yes, it's a big decision. Someone said to me last night, "You've got a lot of weight on your shoulders," and I said, "No, I only have 1/7 of the weight because I've got these other people who are holding it up as well." And I also said, but we're also very fortunate that we have several well-qualified candidates to choose from. This isn't the decision we had to make, 3-4 years ago? This is a very different decision. It's a big decision, but I think in the end, we're all going to feel a lot better walking out of the room tonight than we did the last time we got together for this reason.
Bill?
I agree, Paul, that the pool is much more qualified than what we had last time.
Well, I just want to say this and defend the pool from last time, and because I was on the pre-screening committee that we whittled it down to 3 candidates, and then one dropped, and it ended up being 2 candidates. So it appeared to you, to the committee, that it wasn't that great of a field. But I'm going to tell you, we had some very good candidates. As a matter of fact, there's a number of districts, whether it's Ipswich or Pawtucket or whatever you want, where those candidates that we interviewed have been working now for some time. So, and the candidate that we rejected that night when we voted for Dr. Galinsky, later on went to Newburyport and signed a contract. So,
And has since left, though.
and he's since left, absolutely. So, I'm just saying, so for the sitting school committee members at the time that just saw 2 candidates, I don't blame you for feeling that way. And that was the reason why, when we went into this process, I said, I felt that the committee needed to see more than just 2 or 3 candidates.
Bill?
If I might, in the last search, and I want to congratulate Dr. Genziano because he's kept all the candidates in. We had several good candidates who kind of leaked out because we weren't good with the times.
Well, it was the
So that's, I think, a big
timing.
part of the thing.
Absolutely.
But I do think this pool was stronger than the last pool.
Paul?
Yeah. No, and I agree, and there's been some sentiments expressed recently about slowing down this process, and I certainly not on board with that plan. I think we've got several well-qualified candidates in front of us tonight, and I feel strongly that we will pick a superintendent this evening.
Are we to the point where we could have a motion?
Yes.
Yep. Oh, yeah, Marie, before that?
Yeah, I just, talking about the school committee being split, yeah, no doubt about it, we are. But I don't think it's just us. I think it's the school district is split. I think morale is low in some of our departments, and I think that we need to find a way to all come back together and work for the common good, which is for the kids. And, I think that Dr. Hershey is a good candidate. I think Dr. Keogh is a good candidate. And I think we obviously have kind of naturally sort of whittled it down to the 2 of those. But I'm looking at who do I think is going to work better as a collaborator in bringing us together, because I think that's what we need to do. And I think that, Dr. Keogh has those skills, but he also talks about things like in the future and what he's done with the kids. And as I said, he talks about kids and teachers, and I think those are our 2 most important things. And I see him doing that more than Dr. Hershey.
And Matt?
Yeah, I would just like, I think that both Kristen and Marie have very good sentiments, and I had the same feeling about Dr. Keogh. I think he's got a ton of potential, but he hasn't done it. He just simply hasn't done it. Dr. Hershey's been through the everyday math 5 times, analyzing. I mean, that's just the type of experience he brings. Yeah. He said he's successfully communicated. He was 5 years, 4 years, 3 years at Framingham. He got one of his recommendations was from the chair of that school committee, which was a very well done recommendation. So he didn't leave there on bad terms, because he wouldn't have gotten that recommendation. I thought his leadership style. He said he was, an open door. You can walk in and you can talk to him. And what I really liked, he said that he was going to identify future leaders, listen to them, connect them, mentor them. So we've got a lot of good young leaders in this district and old leaders in this district, all I think who could benefit from someone with this type of experience. So I think not only is it good for the district, it's good for the staff, it's good for the teachers, it's good for us, because I think I'm going to learn from him. The way he articulated the budget clearly, he really knows what he's doing. He really understands budgets, knows how to balance budgets, knows where to cut, not to cut. And that's not anything negative towards Dr. Keogh. I felt the same way, Chris, and you did. I think he's a terrific candidate, and he's going to be a terrific superintendent. But he just doesn't bring the package that Dr. Hershey does.
But wonder if what you did is we could have a conversation. Just, you say you hire someone without the direct experience, and I understand that is a huge red flag. But as a school committee, could we have a conversation with him and say, what we would like you to do is hire a retired superintendent for 1 year to be your assistant superintendent, and that gives him.
Well, I mean, I can see where you're going with that, but the attitude that a number of the candidates brought, particularly Dr. Hershey, is one that I've tried to keep in mind throughout my time here, is that we hire good people and we let them do their job. And I think that's something that Steve Hershey would do. I think he would recognize the talent that he already has in the district. I think he would cultivate new talent, and I think he would let them do their job. And so that, I have no reservations about his management style or his priorities. I think, and I don't think we can actually tell him who to
No,
hire.
but as a school committee, it's certainly a conversation you can have. I mean,
But Emery, I find your comment, I know what you're saying, but I find it rather odd when I look back at the last selection, and you voted for Dr. Galinsky. And that exact reason, all right, is the reason why I voted against her and voted for the other candidate, was that I didn't feel that she was going to be a great morale builder, all right, for the district. I felt that that just wasn't her management style. And then that was one of the reasons why I went against that. So I understand your point. I understand your point, but I'm finding it a little bit in contrast.
I just don't feel we are here where we were then.
I think it's interesting that Dr. Hershey brought up the point of how he was able to get support and funding for full-day kindergarten into the district, and that's something that we've heard from the community as a way to go, and we know the research has shown that that's the way to go, and he was able to do that, and that's certainly a wonderful thing for the city going forward. So anybody else, any comments before? Bill, sorry.
No, I think maybe it's time to make a
Well,
motion.
I'm going to say one more thing then, since just want to get this under the wire. So we asked all the candidates the same questions, and one of my questions was talking about offering great programs when you're battling budget constraints. And he was only one of the 4 candidates that said, well, you just need to go get a bigger pie, right? A lot of people say, well, there's only so much of the pie to go around, and so in order to pay for something over here, you might have to take something from over there. He was the one who said, well, you just go get a bigger pie. I mean, that's one of his options. It wasn't the whole story behind his answer, but he was the one that was open to, let's go out and find more money.
Be creative. It shows his creativity. Matt?
I don't really think I have anything to add. As far as the school committee goes, I don't think there's necessarily a split. I think that's wrong. We're all 7 individuals. We all have strong opinions. Sure. That's why we ran for the job. And we can't always, we have to have public meetings to discuss things in forum, and that makes it a little bit awkward. But, I have confidence in each and every one of you that you're making decisions in the best interest of these kids of the schools. That's what counts at the end of the day. And,
Did you want to make a motion?
Sure. I'd be happy to make a motion that we make an offer to hire Dr. Stephen Hershey as our next superintendent.
I'll second that.
All right, I'm going to have a roll call vote. Stephanie, if you would please call right here. David? No. Chris?
No.
David?
Yes.
Anne-Marie?
No.
Mayor Scanlon?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Maria? Yes. Motion carries 5-2. Now I would ask if we would...
Wait, can we,
Well,
before we move on?
Yes, I would like to.
Actually, I have to do, one of us has to do that.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider that.
That's what I was going to ask you to do.
There you go. She's sharp.
Thank you for reading my
So,
mind.
so in order to give this new superintendent a fresh start and the full support of the school committee, we're allowed to reconsider the previous vote with the hopes that that person gains the unanimous support of the school committee. So I make a motion that we
And
reconsider.
I think, Paul, from when we did this before, when we went back to do a reconsidered vote, it still did not become a unanimous vote. And there was concern that for the person that we hired, they felt that they weren't going to have the support of the whole school committee behind them. And that's an important thing for us to do. We all need to have support behind that.
So go ahead and finish your motion.
So I make a motion that we reconsider the previous motion which appointed or selected Dr. Hershey, the superintendent, next superintendent of schools.
Second.
All right, Stephanie, roll call, please.
David,
Yes.
Anne Marie,
Yes.
Mayor Scanlon,
Yes?
Paul,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes. Motion carries 7-0.
May I just say one more thing? I agree with what Anne Marie said, and I just really want to say that even though I think, some of the concerns we had the last time we did a superintendency vote were about personality and all of that, that's where I thought Dr. Hershey was strong, and I'll be sorry to see that go, but I will totally support the decision of the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Anne Marie. And a second? Oh, sorry.
Just a quick detailed question. When I call all the candidates in about 10 minutes, what day would you prefer, Tuesday or Wednesday, for the site visit, so that on Monday I can have
Arrange.
them send it to Donna and send it to you? And how many think they might be able to go?
I can go and I can make any day work.
David?
Well, of those 2 days you mentioned.
Yeah, I'll try to make it. What days are you talking about?
Tuesday or Wednesday?
Because Wednesday, before finance and facilities, whoever was going to just give a report to the rest of the people at the committee that,
Okay.
I came back from the visit, and I thought that's what.
Yes,
we had agreed
that's
to.
right. Yep.
So is Tuesday better than, whatever day, just tell them.
I'd probably say Tuesday.
Tuesday. Okay.
Chris,
So,
can you go?
I can make the time, yep.
For me, it would depend what time.
I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, it would depend what time,
Okay.
because Natick's.
so Tuesday is the preferred, and as many people as can go will go. So I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 7-0, and we're adjourning at 5:02. Thank you.